Rain hammered the warehouse roof while Elena screamed through the duct tape across her mouth. Blood dripped from the cut above her eye. Her missing right arm made the ropes around her left wrist bite deeper into skin already raw from struggling. The man standing over her smiled coldly. Adrian Vale thinks he can walk away from this life? You're going to teach him otherwise. Footsteps echoed outside. The warehouse door exploded inward, and Adrian appeared in the doorway, no longer the gentleman who whispered kind words through anonymous messages, but the monster everyone once feared. If you want to see how this dangerous love story began, stay until the end. Like this video and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Golden sunlight spilled across the Ashford Vineyard estate, like something out of a luxury wedding magazine, all perfect angles and warm glows that photographers chase for hours. White roses climbed stone archways older than most marriages. Crystal chandeliers hung from wooden beams, swaying gently whenever the evening breeze decided to show up. Guests laughed too loudly beneath strings of lights, while a jazz quartet played songs nobody actually listened to. At the far edge of the celebration, pressed against the cool stone of the garden wall, stood Elena Mayrel, 28 years old, pale sage dress that cost more than her monthly rent, hair pulled back in a simple twist because fancy styles required two hands to maintain throughout the night. She kept her shoulders slightly lowered out of habit, the kind of posture that came from years of trying to make herself smaller in rooms that never quite welcomed her. Her right sleeve hung empty beside her body. Elena had always been shy, the kind of woman who apologized before speaking, who smiled softly instead of laughing out loud, who stood near walls at parties and counted the minutes until she could politely leave. But after the accident 3 years ago, the car that hydroplaned on black ice, the metal that crushed bone and nerve beyond any surgeon's ability to repair, her shyness transformed into something else entirely. Invisibility became a survival skill. She learned exactly how long people's eyes lingered before discomfort forced them to look away. Learned which conversations to avoid because they always ended with someone saying, "You're so brave," in that tone that meant, "I'm glad it's you and not me." Learned how to disappear before pity could settle into the air between her and whoever just noticed. Tonight was her younger sister Vivian's wedding, and as always, Vivian commanded every bit of light in every room she entered. Vivian stood near the center of the courtyard now, laughing at something her new husband Marcus whispered in her ear. Her dress cost more than Elena made in 6 months. Her smile belonged on magazine covers. Everything about her screamed effortless perfection, the kind of beauty that opened doors and softened edges and made the world bend slightly in her direction. Elena had spent 28 years standing in that shadow. She didn't resent it exactly. Resentment required energy she didn't have anymore. But she felt the weight of it constantly. The way people's eyes slid past her to find Vivian, the way conversations dried up when she approached, the way her mother introduced her with that slight hesitation that said, "This is my other daughter," without actually using those words. A waiter passed carrying champagne flutes on a silver tray. Elena reached for one, then stopped herself. Drinking required balance she didn't always trust in heels, especially while holding a glass. Better to stay sober and steady and unnoticed. "Elena." She turned to find her Aunt Margaret approaching, expensive perfume arriving 3 steps before the actual woman. Margaret's smile had edges. It always did. "Darling, you look lovely." Margaret's eyes flicked down to the empty sleeve, then back up too quickly. "How are you managing?" Managing, as if existence was something that required constant effort and supervision. "I'm fine, Aunt Margaret, thank you." "Good, good." Margaret glanced around like she was already searching for someone more interesting to talk to. "Your sister looks absolutely radiant, doesn't she? Marcus is such a catch. Partner at his law firm before 35. Very impressive." Elena nodded because that was easier than speaking. "Have you been seeing anyone?" Margaret asked, and there it was, the question that always came eventually, wrapped in false concern. "You know, there are support groups for people for people adjusting to life after traumatic injuries. I read an article about a man who lost both legs and still managed to find a lovely wife. Anything's possible these days." Something cold settled in Elena's chest. She kept her smile in place because that was the only weapon she had. "I'm not looking right now, but thank you for the concern." Margaret patted her arm, the left one, never the missing one, and drifted away toward a cluster of women her own age, probably to share some comment about how brave Elena was for showing up at all. Elena exhaled slowly and turned back toward the stone wall. The reception would last another 3 hours minimum. She could make it. She always did. Her phone buzzed in the small clutch bag hanging from her left shoulder. She pulled it out carefully, grateful for something to do with her hand that didn't involve pretending to adjust her dress or hair. The screen showed a notification from the anonymous messaging app she'd downloaded 6 months ago during a particularly brutal stretch of loneliness. The app was simple: random connections based on vague interests, no profile pictures, no real names, just conversations with strangers who might understand pieces of you that the people who actually knew your name never bothered to see. She'd matched with someone called a V 3 months ago. His first message had been blunt. "You sound like you're apologizing for existing. Stop that." She'd almost blocked him immediately. But something about the directness appealed to her. No pity, no careful word choices designed to avoid mentioning the obvious. Just straight observation. They'd been talking ever since. The message waiting now was short. "How's the wedding disaster?" Elena glanced around to make sure nobody was watching, then typed back quickly. "Surviving. Barely." His response came within seconds. "That bad?" "People keep telling me I'm brave for attending. That's not a compliment. That's them admitting they lack imagination." Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Adrian, she'd started calling him that after he mentioned his middle name was Vale and said she could use it if she wanted, never treated her like she was fragile. He didn't ignore her disability, but he didn't center every conversation around it either. He just talked to her like she was a person capable of handling complexity. It was more than most people managed. "I hate weddings," she typed. "Because of the crowd or because it's your sister?" Elena hesitated. This was the edge she always approached but never crossed. The admission that part of her did resent Vivian, not for being beautiful or successful, but for never once acknowledging how easy her life had been compared to Elena's. For never noticing the way their mother praised Vivian's accomplishments while describing Elena's continued existence as such a blessing. "Both," she finally sent. "Then leave." "I can't." "It's her wedding. You're not contractually obligated to suffer through other people's happiness." "Walk out, go home, watch bad television, and eat something that isn't tiny and served on a cocktail napkin." Elena smiled despite herself. "You make it sound so simple." "Because it is. You're choosing to stay somewhere that makes you miserable because you think leaving would be rude. But nobody there is worried about being rude to you." He had a point. Several points, actually. But leaving felt impossible. It always did. "Elena." She looked up to find Vivian herself approaching, dress trailing dramatically across the manicured grass. Up close, her sister's makeup was flawless, her smile bright and practiced. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." Vivian's eyes dropped briefly to the phone in Elena's hand. "Who are you texting?" "Nobody. Just checking messages." "Well, come on. We're about to do the cake cutting, and I want you in the photos." Vivian linked her arm through Elena's left one, tugging her gently away from the wall. "You can't hide back here all night." Elena let herself be led toward the center of the celebration, feeling the familiar weight of attention settling on her shoulders. Conversations paused as they passed. Eyes tracked the empty sleeve. Someone whispered something that ended with "such a shame." Vivian either didn't notice or pretended not to. The cake stood on a table near the edge of the dance floor, 3 tiers of white fondant and sugar flowers that probably cost more than Elena's car. Photographers circled like sharks while Marcus took his position beside Vivian, one hand resting possessively on her waist. "Elena, stand right there." Vivian pointed to a spot slightly behind and to the left, just out of the main frame. The position of family members who needed to be included but not featured. Elena moved to the designated spot and watched her sister cut through perfect frosting with a silver knife, laughing as Marcus fed her a bite and purposely smudged icing on her nose. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, Vivian glowed, and Elena stood slightly out of focus, smiling because that was what you did at weddings. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down while everyone's attention focused on the happy couple. "You're miserable right now, aren't you? How did you know?" "Because I'm reading your messages and you type differently when you're pretending to be fine." Shorter sentences, fewer real words. Elena felt something crack slightly in her chest. This stranger knew her better than most of her family. "I can't just leave," she typed. "My mother would never forgive me." When's the last time she asked how you're actually doing? Elena didn't respond to that. Exactly, Adrian sent. You're protecting people who don't protect you. That's not loyalty. That's self-destruction. The cake cutting finished. Vivian and Marcus moved toward the dance floor for their first dance, while a singer took the microphone and began some romantic ballad about forever and always, and other things that sounded better in songs than in actual relationships. Elena drifted back toward the edges of the room, grateful for the darkness beyond the string lights. I wish you were here, she typed before she could stop herself. The message sat there for a long moment, 3 dots appearing and disappearing as Adrian typed and deleted whatever he was going to say. Finally, would that actually help? Maybe. Probably. I don't know. At least then I'd have one person in this entire place who actually wanted to talk to me. You shouldn't have to walk into places alone and hope someone notices you exist. Well, I do. That's just how it is. It doesn't have to be. Elena shoved the phone back in her bag before she said something stupid like, then prove it, or come get me, or any of the desperate things that lived in the back of her throat most days. The reception continued around her. Vivian danced with Marcus, then with their father, then with Marcus's business partners, while everyone commented on how graceful she looked. Elena stood near the gift table and counted the minutes until she could reasonably leave without causing a scene. Someone touched her left elbow gently. She turned to find an older woman she didn't recognize, probably one of Marcus's relatives. I just wanted to say you're very brave for being here. The woman's smile was kind, but her eyes held that look Elena knew too well. I lost my hearing in one ear after an infection, and I thought my life was over. But look at you, still showing up to family events. It's truly inspiring. Elena wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled softly. Thank you. That's very kind. The woman patted her arm and moved away, probably feeling good about herself for saying something meaningful to the disabled girl. Elena's phone buzzed again. If I told you to meet me outside the East Garden entrance in 10 minutes, would you do it? Her heart stopped. What? Simple question. Would you leave this wedding if I asked you to? Are you here? Answer the question first. Elena's hand shook as she typed. This is crazy. We've never even met in person. I know, so answer the question. Would you meet me? Every rational part of her brain screamed no. He could be anyone. This could be dangerous. She barely knew him beyond 3 months of messages. But another part, the part that had been slowly suffocating beneath other people's pity and false kindness, whispered yes. Where's the East Garden entrance? She finally sent. Follow the stone path past the vineyard rows. 10 minutes. You're serious? Completely. Your choice. Elena stood perfectly still while the reception swirled around her. Vivian laughed at something near the bar. Their mother showed off photos on her phone to a group of relatives. Marcus's friends discussed golf handicaps and stock portfolios. Nobody would notice if she disappeared for a few minutes. She slipped away from the lights and followed the stone path leading into the vineyard itself. Rows of grapevines stretched into darkness, leaves rustling softly in the evening breeze. Her heels clicked against stone until she reached a small garden area with a wooden bench and climbing roses. Empty. Elena checked her phone. 9:47 p.m. She'd give him until 9:55, then head back before someone noticed her absence. She sat down carefully on the bench and waited. Footsteps approached from the opposite direction. Elena stood quickly, heart hammering. A man emerged from the shadows between the vines. Tall, maybe 6'2", dark hair cut short. Simple black suit that probably cost more than everything Elena currently owned. But it was his face that made her breath catch. Sharp angles, strong jaw, eyes that looked almost black in the dim light. Handsome in the dangerous way that made smart women nervous. He stopped a few feet away, studying her with an intensity that should have felt intrusive but somehow didn't. Elena. His voice matched the messages exactly. Low, controlled, nothing wasted. Adrian? Veil. But yes. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. This man had crossed however many miles to show up at a wedding he wasn't invited to, all because she'd typed, "I wish you were here," into her phone. You actually came. You said you needed someone who wanted to talk to you. He moved closer, just slightly. So here I am. This is insane. Probably. He didn't smile, but something shifted in his expression. You want me to leave? I don't know what I want. Elena wrapped her left arm around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm evening. Why would you do this? Because you asked. I didn't actually ask. I just said, I know what you said. Adrian's eyes tracked across her face, taking in details she couldn't see. You said you wish I was here, past tense, wishing for something that couldn't happen. That's the saddest thing I've read in months. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. There's a difference. He gestured toward the bench. Sit. You're shaking. Elena sat because her legs felt unsteady. Adrian remained standing, hands in his pockets, looking completely at ease despite the absolute strangeness of this entire situation. How did you even know where the wedding was? You mentioned the Ashford Vineyard last week. There aren't many estates around here with that name. Rest was just timing. You drove here? Flew, then drove from the airport. Elena stared at him. You flew across the country because I sent a sad text message? You've been sending sad messages for 3 months. This one was just the first time you actually admitted you wanted help. Adrian finally sat down beside her, leaving careful space between them. I'm not going to pretend this isn't strange. It is, but walking away felt worse than showing up. I don't understand you. That's fair. Most people don't. They sat in silence for a moment while music drifted from the reception in the distance. Elena's mind raced through 1,000 questions, but she couldn't figure out which one to ask first. What do we do now? She finally managed. Whatever you want. I can leave, or I can walk back in there with you and you can introduce me as a friend, or we can sit here until you're ready to go home. Those are very different options. You're the one in control here, Elena, not me. Something about the way he said her name made her chest tighten. Like it mattered. Like she mattered. If you walk in there with me, people will ask questions. Let them. They'll want to know who you are, how we know each other, why you're here. I'll tell them the truth, that we met through mutual interests and I decided to surprise you. Adrian's expression didn't change. Unless you'd rather I lie. I'd rather none of this was happening because I can't process it. Understandable. Elena laughed suddenly, sharp and slightly hysterical. This is the weirdest night of my life. Good weird or bad weird? I genuinely don't know yet. Adrian stood and offered his left hand, matching hers. Come on, let's go back before someone sends a search party. Elena took his hand and let him pull her gently to her feet. His grip was steady, confident, nothing tentative about it. Like holding her hand was the most natural thing in the world. They walked back toward the reception together, following the stone path through the vineyard. The lights grew brighter, music grew louder, and Elena felt herself tensing with every step. Breathe, Adrian said quietly. They're not going to eat you. You don't know my family. I know you've survived 28 years with them. That's enough information. They reached the edge of the celebration. Several people turned to look, curiosity sharp in their expressions. Vivian spotted them immediately, her smile faltering slightly. Elena? Vivian approached quickly, eyes moving between them. Where did you go? And who is this? This is Adrian Vale, a friend. The words felt strange coming out, like trying on clothes that didn't quite fit yet. Adrian, this is my sister Vivian. Adrian extended his hand. Congratulations on your marriage. Vivian shook it automatically, clearly thrown off balance. Thank you. I didn't realize Elena was bringing anyone. She wasn't. I surprised her. That's... Vivian looked at Elena like she'd suddenly become a stranger. That's very sweet. How do you two know each other? We met online, Elena said before Adrian could respond. A few months ago. Online. Vivian's tone suggested she'd just heard Elena confess to something vaguely shameful. Like a dating app? Like people who actually talk to each other, Adrian said, voice pleasant but carrying an edge that made Vivian blink. Nice wedding, by the way. Very tasteful. Oh, thank you. Vivian glanced back toward Marcus, who was watching from near the bar with obvious confusion. Well, I should probably... Absolutely. Adrian smiled, and it looked practiced, professional, the kind of expression that meant nothing. Enjoy your celebration. Vivian drifted away, but Elena could feel her sister's eyes returning to them every few seconds. You just made that incredibly awkward, Elena whispered. She made it awkward by interrogating you like you'd committed a crime. Adrian guided her gently toward an empty table away from the main crowd. Sit. I'll get you something to drink. You don't have to. I know. Sit anyway. Elena sat. Adrian disappeared toward the bar and returned a few minutes later, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. He set one in front of her and kept the other for himself. Thank you. You're welcome. They sat in comfortable silence while the reception continued around them. People kept glancing their direction, whispering to each other. Elena felt the familiar weight of attention, but it felt different now. Less like pity and more like confusion, like they couldn't quite figure out what they were seeing. This is going to cause so many questions later, Elena said quietly. Good. Questions mean they're actually thinking about you instead of ignoring you. I don't want to be thought about. Yes, you do. You just want to be thought about correctly. Adrian took a sip of champagne, eyes scanning the crowd with the expression of someone cataloging threats. Half these people have been treating you like you're invisible all night. Now they can't stop looking. Because they're trying to figure out what you're doing with me. Adrian turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his expression made her breath catch. I'm here because you're the first person in months who said anything interesting. Because you're smart and funny, and you see things other people miss. Because talking to you doesn't feel like work. He leaned slightly closer. That's what I'm doing with you. If they can't figure that out, they're stupider than they look. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that, like she was worth crossing distance for, like her existence mattered beyond being someone's sad sister, or brave disabled woman, or quiet girl in the corner. I don't know what to say to that. Then don't say anything. Just sit here and let me pretend I'm at a wedding that doesn't make me want to set things on fire. Elena laughed despite herself. You hate weddings too? I hate performative happiness. If people were actually this happy, they wouldn't need to rent a vineyard and hire photographers to prove it. You're very cynical. I'm very honest. There's a difference. The music changed. Vivian and Marcus took the floor for another dance while guests clapped politely. Elena watched her sisters spin beneath the lights, all grace and practiced perfection. She's beautiful, Adrian said quietly. I know. I wasn't complimenting her. I was stating an observation. He gestured toward Vivian with his champagne glass. Beautiful people learn early that beauty opens doors, makes life easier. They start to believe the world works the same way for everyone, that if you're struggling, it's a personal failing rather than a structural problem. You think that about my sister? I think your sister has spent 28 years benefiting from advantages she doesn't acknowledge. That creates a very specific type of blindness. Adrian's eyes shifted back to Elena, and I think you've spent 28 years making yourself smaller so she can shine brighter. Elena's throat tightened. You don't know anything about my relationship with my sister. I know you're at her wedding trying not to cry. I know you hide near walls and apologize for existing. I know your messages to me are full of self-deprecation disguised as humor. Adrian set his glass down carefully. Am I wrong? He wasn't wrong. Elena knew he wasn't wrong, but hearing it stated so plainly felt like being stripped naked in front of everyone. My family loves me, she said weakly. I didn't say they don't, but love isn't the same as seeing someone clearly. Your family loves the version of you that stays quiet and grateful. They love the sister who doesn't outshine Vivian. They love the daughter who makes them feel noble for including her. Stop, Elena's voice cracked slightly. You don't get to show up here and psychoanalyze my entire life. You're right. I'm sorry. Adrian leaned back, something like regret crossing his face. That was inappropriate. They sat in tense silence while Elena tried to control the emotions surging through her chest. Anger, hurt, recognition, relief. All of it tangled together into something she couldn't name. I should go, she finally said. Okay? You can stay if you want. Nobody will bother you. I came here for you. If you're leaving, I'm leaving. Elena stood on shaking legs. Adrian stood with her, still maintaining that careful distance that somehow felt more intimate than touching. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, just walked toward the parking area with Adrian beside her, feeling eyes track their movement but not caring enough to stop. When they reached her car, a beat-up Honda that looked embarrassing next to the luxury vehicles filling the lot, Elena finally turned to face him properly. What happens now? I stay in town tonight, fly home tomorrow. Adrian pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. My hotel information. If you want to talk more, call me. If you want me to disappear, I'll respect that. You came all this way just for tonight? I came all this way because you needed someone to choose you. That's what I did. What you do with it is up to you. Elena stared at this strange man who'd crossed the country based on text messages and instinct. Part of her wanted to thank him. Part of her wanted to scream at him for making everything more complicated. Part of her just wanted to stop thinking. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Do what? Let someone see me. Actually see me. It's terrifying. Adrian nodded slowly, like he'd expected this response. Being invisible is safer. I understand that. But it's also lonely as hell. Maybe I'm okay with lonely. If that were true, you wouldn't have been messaging me at 3 a.m, telling me about the way light hits your kitchen window when you can't sleep. Adrian stepped slightly closer, not touching, but close enough that Elena could feel the heat coming off him. You're not okay with lonely. You're just better at surviving it than most people. Elena's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. I don't know how to do this. How to be the person someone actually shows up for. Then start small. Have coffee with me tomorrow morning before I fly out. No pressure, no expectations, just two people who have actual conversations instead of performing for each other. That's all? That's all? Elena pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed in the hotel address. 9 a.m.? 9 a.m. works. Okay. She unlocked her car and slid into the driver's seat, every movement feeling foreign. Thank you for coming, for saying those things. Even the ones that hurt. Especially the ones that hurt. Adrian stepped back from the car. Drive safe, Elena. She drove away without looking back, but she could feel his presence in her rearview mirror until she turned onto the main road. The apartment was dark and empty when she got home. Elena changed out of her dress carefully, hung it in the closet, and sat on the edge of her bed staring at her phone. One new message from Adrian. You made it home okay? Yes. Good. See you tomorrow. 9 a.m. Coffee shop attached to the hotel lobby. Okay. Elena set the phone on her nightstand and lay back against her pillows. Her heart still raced. Her hands still shook slightly. The entire night felt unreal, like something that happened to other people in movies rather than to quiet women who disappeared at their own sister's wedding. But Adrian had shown up. Someone had crossed an entire country just to stand beside her for a few hours. That meant something. Elena closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would bring answers to questions she wasn't sure she was ready to ask. But for the first time in 3 years, she felt like maybe being seen wasn't the worst thing that could happen. Maybe it was exactly what she needed. Elena woke up at 7:30 with her stomach twisted into knots. She hadn't slept well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian standing in the shadows between the vineyard rows, his voice cutting through her carefully constructed defenses like they were made of paper. The entire night felt surreal in the harsh morning light streaming through her bedroom window. She should cancel, text him right now and say something came up, that she couldn't make it, that last night was a mistake fueled by champagne and wedding emotions. Instead, she dragged herself out of bed and into the shower. The water ran too hot, but she didn't adjust it. Let it scald. Maybe that would wake her up enough to figure out what the hell she was doing meeting a stranger for coffee just because he'd said a few things that made her feel seen for the first time in years. She dried off carefully with her left hand, the routine so practiced now that she barely thought about it anymore. Picked out jeans and a simple gray sweater. Nothing fancy. Nothing that looked like she was trying too hard. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Vivian and 2 text messages. Where did you go last night? Mom is asking questions. Call me when you wake up. We need to talk about your friend Adrian. Elena deleted both messages without responding. She wasn't ready for Vivian's interrogation. Wasn't ready to defend choices she didn't fully understand herself. The wedding was over. Vivian had gotten her perfect day. What Elena did afterward was nobody's business but her own. The drive to Adrian's hotel took 20 minutes through light Saturday morning traffic. The building was nice, not luxury level, but several steps above the budget chains near the highway. The kind of place business travelers stayed when they had decent expense accounts. Elena parked and sat in her car for 5 full minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart hammering against her ribs. This was stupid. Reckless. She was about to have coffee with a man she'd only met in person 12 hours ago. Someone who knew things about her that she'd never told anyone. Someone who'd shown up at her sister's wedding like some kind of romantic gesture from a movie. Except this wasn't a movie, and she didn't know how those stories actually ended in real life. Her phone buzzed. "You're sitting in your car trying to talk yourself out of coming inside, aren't you?" Elena looked up sharply and saw Adrian standing near the hotel entrance, coffee cup in hand, watching her through the windshield with something that might have been amusement. She texted back, "How did you know? Because I can see you. And because you've been parked for 5 minutes without moving. Caught." Elena grabbed her bag and got out of the car before she could change her mind. Adrian waited for her near the glass doors, still wearing black but casual this time. Jeans, t-shirt, leather jacket that probably cost more than her rent. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning. Coffee's inside. They have actual food too if you're hungry." "Just coffee." They walked into the lobby together. The cafe occupied a corner space with large windows and maybe a dozen small tables. Only 3 other people sat scattered around the room, all of them buried in laptops or newspapers. Adrian gestured toward a table in the back corner, away from windows and other customers. Elena sat down while he went to the counter and returned a few minutes later carrying 2 mugs. "Black with 1 sugar," he said, setting one in front of her. "That's how you take it, right?" "How did you—" "You mentioned it 3 weeks ago when you were complaining about your coworker who drinks coffee that's basically dessert." Elena stared at him. He remembered that, a throwaway comment in a conversation about nothing important, and he'd remembered. "That's a little creepy." "Probably." Adrian sat down across from her and wrapped his hands around his own mug. "But I pay attention. That's just how I'm wired." They drank in silence for a moment. The coffee was good, better than the instant garbage Elena made at home. She focused on the warmth of the ceramic against her palm instead of the fact that Adrian was watching her with that same intense focus from last night. "You deleted your sister's messages this morning," he said finally. "How could you possibly know that?" "Body language. You walked in here like someone avoiding an interrogation." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "What did she want?" "To ask questions I don't want to answer." "About me?" "About you. About why I left early. About why I didn't tell anyone I was bringing someone." Elena set her mug down carefully. "My family isn't used to me having my own life. They're used to me being quiet and grateful and not causing complications. And I'm a complication." "You showed up unannounced at my sister's wedding. Yes, you're a massive complication." Adrian nodded slowly, like he'd expected this. "You want me to apologize for that?" "I don't know what I want." Elena rubbed her left hand across her face, suddenly exhausted despite the coffee. "Last night was overwhelming. This morning I woke up questioning my entire judgment process. And now I'm sitting here with you, and I still don't know if this is brave or stupid. Can it be both? That doesn't make me feel better." "It's not supposed to make you feel better. It's supposed to be honest." Adrian's eyes stayed locked on hers. "You want me to tell you this is all perfectly safe and normal? I can't. It's not. We met online. We've had 3 months of conversations. I flew across the country based on instinct and showed up at an event I wasn't invited to. None of that follows any reasonable dating advice." "Then why did you do it?" "Because reasonable dating advice has never worked for me. Because I'm tired of pretending to be interested in women who talk about nothing and expect me to be impressed by surface-level bullshit. Because you said something real and it cut through everything else." Adrian leaned forward slightly. "I'm here because you're worth showing up for. If you don't believe that, I'll finish my coffee and leave. Your choice." Elena's throat felt tight. She wanted to argue with him, wanted to list all the reasons he was wrong, all the ways she wasn't worth the effort he'd already invested. But the words wouldn't come. Because part of her, the part she'd been burying for 3 years beneath layers of practiced invisibility, wanted desperately to believe him. "I'm scared," she finally whispered. "Of me?" "Of this. Of letting someone actually see me and then realizing I'm not worth the trouble after all." "That's not how this works, Elena. I already see you. I saw you 3 months ago. This isn't some trial period where I'm deciding if you're good enough. I already decided. People change their minds. Weak people change their minds." Adrian's voice carried an edge now. "I'm not weak, and neither are you, despite what your family has convinced you to believe." Elena flinched. "You don't know my family. I know they let you stand alone at that wedding while everyone treated you like you were invisible. I know your sister hasn't once asked how you're actually doing beyond surface pleasantries. I know your mother introduces you like an afterthought. Adrian's expression didn't soften. Am I wrong about any of that? He wasn't wrong, but hearing it stated so bluntly felt like being cut open. My family loves me. I didn't say they don't love you. I said they don't see you. There's a difference. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. If you can't handle honesty, this conversation ends here. Elena stood up abruptly, chair scraping against tile. Maybe it should end. Maybe you showing up last night was a mistake, and we should both just walk away before this gets more complicated. Adrian didn't move, just looked at her with something that might have been disappointment. Sit down, Elena. Don't tell me what to do. Sit down. His voice dropped lower. Not aggressive, but absolutely certain. You're scared, and that's making you defensive. I get it, but running away right now is just proving your family right about who you are. Fuck you. The words came out sharp, and Elena barely recognized her own voice saying them. She never cursed, never raised her voice, never pushed back. But something in Adrian's expression shifted when she did. Almost like approval. There she is, he said quietly. There who is. The person hiding underneath all that practiced politeness. The one who's angry and tired and done pretending to be grateful for scraps. Adrian gestured toward the chair. Sit down and let me talk to her instead of the version you show everyone else. Elena sat. Not because he told her to, but because her legs suddenly felt weak. I hate you right now, she said, and meant it. That's fair. You don't get to show up and tell me my family doesn't see me. You don't get to psychoanalyze 3 decades of relationships based on one wedding. You're right, I don't. Adrian picked up his coffee mug but didn't drink from it. But I also don't have to pretend I didn't watch your sister parade you around like evidence of her own virtue while treating you like a prop. I don't have to ignore the fact that you spent that entire night trying to disappear while everyone acted like you already had. Stop. No. Because you need to hear this from someone who isn't invested in keeping you small and quiet and grateful. Elena's eyes burned. She refused to cry. Not here, not in front of him. What do you want from me? Her voice came out raw. Why are you pushing this hard? Because you deserve someone who pushes back. Someone who doesn't accept your self-deprecation as fact. Someone who sees what you're capable of instead of what you're missing. Adrian finally set the mug down. And because I'm selfish enough to want access to the parts of you that nobody else gets to see. That's manipulative. It's honest. There's a difference. They stared at each other across the small table while other customers drifted in and out of the cafe, oblivious to the tension crackling between them. Elena's phone buzzed on the table. Vivian again. Mom wants you to come to brunch. We're at Riverside Bistro. Please just show up so we can talk about last night like adults. Elena turned the phone face down without responding. Your sister? Adrian asked. She wants me at family brunch so they can interrogate me about you. Are you going? No. Why not? Because I'm tired of performing for them. Because showing up means answering questions I don't owe them answers to. Because... Elena stopped, surprised by the venom in her own voice. Because you're done being their proof of concept for conditional love, Adrian finished. You make everything sound so calculated. I make everything sound accurate. Your family loves you as long as you stay within specific boundaries. The second you step outside those boundaries, suddenly there's concern and questions and requests for explanations. Adrian leaned forward again. That's not unconditional love. That's control wrapped in concern. Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to defend her mother and Vivian and everyone who'd ever smiled sadly at her empty sleeve while telling her how brave she was. But the words died in her throat, because he was right. What am I supposed to do? She finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. Whatever you want. This is your life, Elena, not theirs. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You just don't want to deal with the consequences of choosing yourself. Her phone buzzed again. This time a call. Not a text. Her mother's name flashed across the screen. Elena stared at it while it rang 3 times, 4 times, 5. Then she reached out and declined the call. Something loosened in her chest. Something that had been wound too tight for too long. Adrian smiled slightly. How does that feel? Terrifying. Good. Terrifying means you're actually living instead of just surviving. They finished their coffee in silence that felt less hostile than before. Elena's heart still raced, but the panic had faded into something else. Not calm exactly, but maybe clarity. Tell me something true about yourself, she said finally. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Such as? Something you've never told anyone. Something real. He considered this for a long moment, fingers tapping against the empty mug. I hate most people, he said finally. Not in a violent way, just in a tired way. I'm exhausted by small talk and fake interest in people who perform empathy instead of actually feeling it. Most days I'd rather be alone than deal with the amount of pretending required to exist in social spaces. Then why are you here with me? Because you're the exception. Talking to you doesn't feel like performing. It feels like finally breathing after holding my breath for years. Elena's chest tightened. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm just telling you why I showed up. Adrian stood and grabbed both their empty mugs. You want more coffee? Sure. He walked back to the counter while Elena sat alone with his words echoing in her head. Nobody had ever called her an exception before. Nobody had ever suggested that knowing her made anything better instead of more complicated. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from her mother. Elena Marie Murel, you need to call me back immediately. Vivian is very upset, and you're being incredibly rude by ignoring your family on the day after her wedding. This isn't like you. Elena read it twice, then deleted it. Adrian returned with fresh coffee and slid back into his seat. Your family's still calling? My mother. She's disappointed in my behavior. Your behavior being what exactly? Existing outside their approved narrative? Something like that. Elena wrapped both hands around the warm mug. She said this isn't like me. And she's right. It's not. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe. They drank in comfortable silence while morning light shifted across the table between them. Other customers came and went. The barista cleaned the espresso machine. Life continued around them, while Elena sat with this strange man who somehow understood her better than people who'd known her entire life. What happens now? She asked eventually. My flight leaves at 4. I go back home. You stay here. Adrian's eyes searched her face. But that doesn't mean this ends. What does it mean then? It means we keep talking, keep learning each other, keep building something that might actually matter instead of just another forgettable connection. He paused. Unless you don't want that. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was moving too fast, that she should slow down and think carefully before getting involved with someone who pushed this hard. But rationality had kept her invisible for 3 years. Maybe it was time to try something else. I want that, she heard herself say. I'm terrified of it, but I want it. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, not quite a smile, but close to it. Good, because I already bought a return ticket for next weekend. Elena blinked. What? I'm coming back next Saturday. Booked it this morning before you got here. Adrian pulled out his phone and showed her the confirmation email. Figured we could actually spend real time together instead of just coffee before flights. You're serious? Completely? That's insane. Probably. But I'm done pretending to be reasonable about things that matter. Adrian set his phone down. If that's too much too fast, tell me now and I'll cancel. Elena stared at the confirmation email with its clear dates and flight numbers. Hard evidence that this man planned to keep showing up, that this wasn't just some romantic gesture that faded once he went home. You really want this, she said quietly. I really want this. Why? Because you're worth it. How many times do I have to say that before you believe me? Elena's throat felt tight. I don't know. A lot, probably. Then I'll keep saying it until it sticks. They finished their coffee while Elena tried to process what had just happened. Adrian wasn't just some online connection who'd made a dramatic gesture. He was planning to keep showing up, week after week, until this became something real. The weight of that terrified her, but it also made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Around 11, Adrian walked her back to her car. The parking lot had filled up with weekend shoppers and hotel guests, normal people doing normal things. Elena felt disconnected from all of it, like she was moving through a parallel reality where brave choices were possible. "Next Saturday," Adrian said when they reached her Honda. "I'll text you my arrival time once I'm through security." "Okay. You having second thoughts?" "About 1,000 of them." "That's fair." Adrian stepped closer, close enough that Elena could feel the heat coming off him despite the cool morning air. "But you're still going to be here next Saturday?" "Yes." "Then the second thoughts don't matter, just the choice." He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss against her forehead. Nothing dramatic or possessive, just gentle acknowledgement. Then he stepped back and headed toward the hotel entrance without looking back. Elena sat in her car for another 5 minutes, fingers pressed against the spot where his lips had touched her skin. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from Vivian and her mother, but she didn't check them. For the first time in 3 years, other people's disappointment felt less important than her own needs. She drove home feeling like she'd crossed some invisible line she could never uncross. The apartment felt emptier than usual when she got back. Elena made herself lunch mechanically, sandwich, chips, glass of water, and sat at her small kitchen table staring at nothing. Her phone finally went silent around 2 p.m. Then at 3, someone knocked on her door. Elena's stomach dropped. She knew who it was before she even looked through the peephole. Vivian stood in the hallway wearing designer sunglasses and an expression that meant trouble. Elena considered not answering, pretending she wasn't home, but Vivian had seen her car in the parking lot. There was no escape. She opened the door halfway. "Hi." "Hi?" Vivian pushed past her into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. "You've been ignoring Mom's calls all day, and all you have to say is hi?" "I've been busy." "Busy doing what? Hiding from your family?" Vivian yanked off her sunglasses and glared. "What the hell is going on with you?" "Nothing's going on. Don't lie to me. You disappeared from my wedding with some random guy nobody's ever heard of. Then you ignore every single message today. Mom is worried sick." "Mom is worried I'm not following the script." Elena closed the door and leaned against it. "There's a difference." "What script? What are you talking about?" "The one where I show up, smile politely, don't cause problems, stay quiet and grateful, and never ask for anything." Vivian's expression shifted into something between confusion and hurt. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Elena felt something dark rising in her chest. All the years of biting her tongue, all the moments of swallowing resentment disguised as understanding. "When's the last time you asked how I'm actually doing, Vivian?" "I ask all the time." "No. You ask if I'm okay. That's not the same thing. Okay means functional. It means surviving. It doesn't mean happy or fulfilled or anything beyond baseline existence." "This is about that guy, isn't it? Adrian." Vivian spit his name like it tasted bad. "You've known him for what, 5 minutes? And suddenly you're questioning your entire family?" "I've known him for 3 months. Online doesn't count." "Why not?" "Because it's not real, Elena. Anyone can pretend to be someone they're not behind a screen. Anyone can say pretty words when there's no actual connection required." Vivian moved closer, voice dropping. "You have no idea who this man really is. He could be dangerous. He could be lying about everything. Or he could just be someone who actually sees me instead of what's missing." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've spent 28 years treating me like your broken sister who needs protection and pity. It means Mom introduces me like an afterthought. It means I've been invisible in this family unless someone needs proof of their own compassion." Elena's voice shook, but she kept going. "And yesterday, someone showed up who didn't treat me that way. So yeah, maybe I'm questioning things." Vivian stepped back like she'd been slapped. "I have never treated you like you're broken. You just told me my online relationship doesn't count because it's not real. Like my judgment is so compromised by loneliness that I can't recognize basic human connection." Elena laughed bitterly. "That's exactly treating me like I'm broken, Vivian. You just don't see it because you're so used to being right about everything." "I'm trying to protect you." "I don't need protection. I need respect. There's a difference." They stared at each other across Elena's small living room. Two sisters who'd spent decades in completely different realities, finally colliding. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Is that really how you see me? As someone who looks down on you?" "I don't know anymore." Elena's voice came out tired. "Maybe you don't mean to. Maybe you genuinely think you're being kind. But kind isn't the same as equal, Vivian. And I'm tired of being treated like the family project.
That's not... Vivian stopped, jaw working. You think I don't know how lucky I've been? You think I don't see the way people treat you differently? If you see it, you've never done anything to stop it. What am I supposed to do? Force people to treat you fairly? Police every conversation?
You could start by not acting like my life is less valuable than yours. By not pitying me every time something good happens to you. Elena's throat felt raw. Do you know how exhausting it is to celebrate your happiness while swallowing my own loneliness? To smile through wedding planning while you complained about seating charts, and I couldn't even imagine someone wanting to marry me. Vivian flinched. Elena, no, I'm done pretending this doesn't hurt. I'm done acting like everything's fine when it's not. And if that makes me the difficult sister, then fine. I'm difficult now. Silence stretched between them like broken glass. Finally, Vivian grabbed her purse and headed toward the door. She paused with her hand on the knob, not looking back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I didn't know you felt this way. Because you never asked. Vivian left without responding. Elena slid down against the closed door until she was sitting on the floor, shaking. She just burned a bridge she couldn't rebuild, said things out loud that could never be unsaid. Part of her wanted to call Vivian back, apologize, smooth everything over like she always did. But a larger part felt strangely liberated. She stayed on the floor until her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. Made it through security. Flight board's in 20. How's your day going? Elena stared at the message, then typed back, I just told my sister everything I've been holding in for 28 years. How does that feel? Terrifying. Good. Terrifying means you're finally being honest. Proud of you. 2 simple sentences. But they mattered more than all of Vivian's tears combined. Elena pulled herself off the floor and went to her bedroom. Lay down on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling while her phone continued to buzz with calls she didn't answer. Somewhere over the next few hours, the calls stopped. By evening, only silence remained. Elena ordered takeout, ate it alone at her kitchen table, watched bad television until her eyes burned. Then around midnight, her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something, instinct or curiosity or desperation, made her pick up. Elena Mirel. The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. Yes? My name is Lucian Graves. I'm a business associate of Adrian Vale. A pause. We need to talk about your relationship with him. Elena's blood went cold. Who is this? Someone trying to save you from making a very dangerous mistake. Adrian isn't who you think he is, Miss Mirel. And if you're smart, you'll walk away before you get hurt. I don't... Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Park near the fountain. Come alone. Don't tell Adrian. The voice carried absolute certainty. If you care about your safety, you'll show up. The line went dead. Elena sat frozen in her kitchen, heart hammering, staring at her phone like it had just transformed into something poisonous. Who the hell was Lucian Graves? And what did he know about Adrian that she didn't? Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Lucian Graves' voice echoed through her skull on repeat. Adrian isn't who you think he is. The words felt like poison spreading through her bloodstream, contaminating every conversation she'd had with Adrian over the past 3 months. By dawn, she'd convinced herself not to go to the meeting. By 8 a.m., she'd changed her mind again. By noon, she was sitting in her car outside Riverside Park, hands shaking on the steering wheel, trying to decide if walking toward that fountain was the smartest or stupidest thing she'd ever do. Her phone showed 2 messages from Adrian. Landed safely. Forgot how much I hate airports. Thinking about you. Next weekend can't come fast enough. Elena stared at the messages until her eyes burned. This man who'd flown across the country just to stand beside her at a wedding, who'd sat with her in a hotel cafe and called her an exception, who'd somehow seen past every defense she'd spent years building. What if it was all a lie? What if Lucienne was right, and she'd been too desperate for connection to see the truth? She grabbed her bag and got out of the car before fear could change her mind again. The park stretched along the river with walking paths and benches and families feeding ducks near the water. Normal people doing normal things on a normal Sunday afternoon. Elena felt disconnected from all of it as she walked toward the fountain at the center of the main plaza. A man stood waiting near the stone edge. Early 40s, expensive suit that looked tailored specifically for his frame, dark hair graying at the temples, handsome in that polished way that came from money and careful maintenance. He watched her approach with eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Morel," his voice matched the phone call exactly. "Thank you for coming." "Who are you?" Elena stopped several feet away, every instinct screaming at her to run. "Lucian Graves. I told you on the phone." He gestured toward a nearby bench. "Please, sit. This conversation will be easier if you're not looking like you're about to bolt." "I'm not sitting anywhere until you tell me what this is about." "Fair enough." Lucian crossed his arms and studied her with unsettling intensity. "How much has Adrian told you about his past?" "Enough." "Enlighten me. What's enough?" Elena's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business." "It became my business the moment he decided to involve you in his life." Lucien's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "Adrian Vale used to work for me. Did he mention that?" "No." "I didn't think so. He's very good at omission. It's one of his more valuable skills." Lucian pulled out his phone and swiped through several screens before holding it up so Elena could see. "Recognize this?" The screen showed a photograph of Adrian standing beside a black SUV. Younger. Maybe 5 years younger based on his face, wearing tactical gear and holding something that looked like a weapon. His expression was completely different from anything Elena had seen. Cold, dead, dangerous. Her stomach twisted. "That was taken during a collection operation in 2019, Lucian continued, lowering the phone. "Adrian worked enforcement for my organization for almost 6 years. Very talented at his job. Very efficient. Never hesitated when things got messy." "I don't believe you." "Yes, you do. That's why you're still standing here instead of walking away." Lucian slid the phone back into his pocket. "Adrian Vale isn't some romantic hero who showed up at your sister's wedding out of pure affection, Miss Morel. He's a man with a very specific skill set that involves violence and intimidation. And you're currently serving as his attempt at redemption." Elena's breath came too fast. "What organization? Does it matter? Pick your favorite crime drama and insert the appropriate terminology. The point is, Adrian spent years doing things that would keep you awake at night if you knew the details. Then one day he decided he was done, walked away, tried to become someone respectable." Lucian's smile held no warmth. "But you can't wash blood off your hands just because you're tired of seeing it." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Adrian made enemies when he left, including me. And those enemies are very interested in reminding him that retirement isn't actually an option in our line of work." Lucien took a step closer, and Elena forced herself not to retreat. "You're his weakness now, his soft spot, and that makes you valuable." "Valuable how? As leverage? As bait? As proof that trying to build a normal life was always going to fail?" Lucien's eyes tracked across her face. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away before this gets worse. Stop seeing Adrian, block his number, disappear back into whatever quiet existence you had before he decided to use you as his rehabilitation project." Elena's hands curled into fists. "And if I don't? Then you'll learn very quickly that the man you think you know doesn't actually exist. Adrian will protect you because that's what he does now. He plays hero, but protection requires the same violence he's been trying to leave behind. Eventually, you'll see what he really is. And when that happens, you'll wish you'd listened to me today." "You're threatening me. I'm warning you. There's a difference." Lucian straightened his suit jacket. "Adrian cares about you. I can see that. Which means he'll do terrible things to keep you safe. Things that will show you exactly who he used to be. Maybe who he still is underneath all that forced civility." "I'm not afraid of him." "Then you're stupider than you look." Lucian's voice dropped lower. "Adrian Vale has killed people, Miss Morel. Multiple people. With his bare hands when necessary. He's broken bones and destroyed lives and done things I won't describe because you're too sheltered to process them. That's who you're building a relationship with. A man who's very good at pretending to be gentle while carrying bodies worth of violence in his past." Elena felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Every word Lucian said landed like a physical blow. Because part of her, the part that had been paying attention, already knew something was wrong. Already noticed the way Adrian moved through spaces like he was cataloging threats. The way his eyes went dead whenever he talked about certain subjects. The careful control in every gesture that suggested someone who'd learned to restrain himself because the alternative was dangerous.
I don't believe you, she said again, but her voice shook. Yes, you do. Lucian pulled out a business card and held it toward her. My number. When this falls apart, and it will, call me. I'll make sure you stay safe while Adrian deals with the consequences of thinking he could just walk away. Elena took the card automatically, fingers numb. Lucian nodded once and walked away without looking back. Elena stood frozen near the fountain while families continued feeding ducks and joggers passed on the nearby trail. Normal life continuing around her while everything she thought she understood splintered into pieces. Her phone buzzed. Adrian's name flashed across the screen. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hey. His voice came through warm and familiar. You okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Liar. What's wrong? Elena's throat closed. She couldn't ask, couldn't confront him, because if she asked and he confirmed even part of what Lucian had said, then everything between them became something else entirely. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. Because of yesterday? Your sister? Yeah, that. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You want to talk about it? Not right now. Okay. He didn't push, which somehow made everything worse. I'm here if you change your mind. I know, thank you. They said goodbye and Elena stood in the park, holding Lucien's business card, feeling like she'd just swallowed glass. She drove home on autopilot, made it to her apartment, sat on her couch staring at nothing while her mind raced through every conversation she'd had with Adrian over 3 months, looking for clues, for evidence, for anything that proved Lucian was lying. But she kept coming back to the same details. The way Adrian had appeared at the wedding with the confidence of someone who never questioned his right to occupy space. The way people at the reception had looked at him with something that might have been fear disguised as respect. The way he'd shut down uncomfortable conversations with just a glance. Those weren't normal behaviors. Those were the instincts of someone who'd spent years being dangerous. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Elena, we need to talk about your behavior this weekend. Vivian is very hurt, and your father and I are extremely disappointed. Please call when you're ready to have an adult conversation about this. Elena deleted it without reading past the first line. She couldn't deal with her family's disappointment right now, not when her entire reality was fracturing. Hours passed. Daylight faded into evening. Elena ordered food she didn't eat and watched television she didn't process. Around 9 p.m., someone knocked on her door. Elena's heart stopped. She looked through the peephole expecting to see Vivian or her mother. Instead, she saw Adrian. He stood in the hallway wearing jeans and a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Elena's first instinct was to not answer, to pretend she wasn't home, to avoid this conversation until she'd figured out what to think. But he knocked again, and his voice came through the door. I know you're home, Elena. Your car's in the lot, and I can see the light under the door. She opened it halfway. What are you doing here? You sounded wrong on the phone. I caught a flight back. Adrian's eyes searched her face. What happened? Nothing happened. I'm just tired. Don't lie to me. I'm not. Someone contacted you. It wasn't a question. Adrian's entire posture changed, tension flooding his shoulders. Who was it? Elena's breath caught. How did you? Because I know how these things work. Because I've been waiting for this since the moment I decided to get involved with you. Adrian pushed past her into the apartment and closed the door behind him. Who contacted you, Elena? A man named Lucien Graves. Adrian's expression went completely flat. No emotion, no reaction, just dead eyes that reminded Elena viscerally of the photograph Lucien had shown her. What did he tell you? That you used to work for him. That you hurt people. That I'm just your redemption project and eventually you'll show me who you really are. Elena's voice shook, but she kept going. Is any of that true? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried no inflection. Yes. The word landed like a gunshot. Elena stepped back. Yes, what? Yes to all of it. I worked for Lucian for 6 years. I did enforcement. I hurt people when they didn't pay or when they broke agreements, or when Lucien needed examples made. Adrian's eyes never left hers. I was very good at my job. Too good.
And when I finally realized what I'd become, I walked away.
When? 2 years ago. And you never thought to mention this? Elena's voice climbed higher. You never thought maybe I should know I was getting involved with someone who
What? Who has a past, who did terrible things. Adrian's control cracked slightly. When exactly was I supposed to tell you, Elena? First message? Third date that we never had? After you already cared enough that walking away would hurt? Before now. Definitely before I found out from your former boss in a park. You met with Lucien? He called me, said I should meet him if I cared about my safety. Fuck. Adrian ran both hands through his hair. What else did he say? That you killed people. That you're dangerous. That I'm leveraged now because you care about me, and that makes me vulnerable. Elena's hands shook. Is that true? Am I in danger because of you? Adrian's jaw worked. Potentially, yes. Elena's legs gave out. She sat down hard on her couch, breath coming too fast. Adrian moved toward her but stopped when she flinched away. Don't touch me. Elena, don't fucking touch me. Her voice came out raw. I need you to stand over there and explain to me how we got here. How I went from lonely woman messaging strangers online to being leverage in whatever criminal bullshit you're still involved in. I'm not still involved. Clearly you are if your former boss is threatening me. Adrian backed up and leaned against the wall across from her, hands shoved in his pockets. Lucien doesn't want me back. He wants me punished for leaving, for thinking I could just walk away and build a normal life. He's using you to prove I can't. So I was right. I am a project. A way for you to prove you're reformed or whatever. Elena laughed bitterly. How stupid am I, thinking someone actually showed up because they cared about me when really I was just convenient rehabilitation. That's not... Adrian stopped, jaw clenched so tight Elena could see the muscle jumping. You weren't convenient. You were the first real thing I'd found in years. The first person who talked to me like I was human instead of useful. But you lied. I omitted. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Adrian's control slipped further. I didn't lie about caring about you. I didn't lie about wanting to know you. I just didn't lead with the worst parts of my past because I wanted a chance to be someone better. You don't get to decide what information I need to make choices about my own life. You're right. I don't. Adrian stared at the floor. But I also knew that if I told you up front that I used to break people's bones for money, you'd never give me a chance. And I wanted that chance more than I've wanted anything in a long time. So you manipulated me. I gave you a version of myself I was trying to become. That's not manipulation. That's hope. Elena wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to rewind 3 months and never download that stupid app that connected her to this man who'd crashed into her life and complicated everything. What did you do exactly? Her voice came out cold. Specifically, what did you do for Lucien? Adrian's eyes met hers, and something in them looked broken. You don't want those details. Yes, I do. If I'm already in danger because of your past, I deserve to know exactly what I'm in danger from. Elena, tell me, or get out and never contact me again. Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried no emotion, like he'd shut down every part of himself that felt things. I collected debts. When people borrowed money from Lucien's organization and didn't pay, I reminded them why that was a bad choice, usually through violence, broken bones, destroyed property, occasionally worse if the debt was significant enough. He paused. I also handled enforcement for protection rackets, made sure businesses understood why paying for security was in their best interest, and I dealt with people who tried to leave the organization without permission. Dealt with them how? However Lucien decided was appropriate. Elena felt bile rise in her throat. Did you kill people? Yes. The word hung in the air between them like something tangible and poisonous. How many? Does the number matter? Yes. Adrian's eyes went dead again. 7. Directly. More if you count situations where I created conditions that led to their deaths. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't process. This man who'd sat across from her in a cafe talking about how much he hated performative conversation had killed 7 people. Maybe more. Had broken bones and destroyed lives and done things she couldn't even imagine. Why did you stop? Because I looked at myself one day and couldn't recognize what I'd become. Because I watched a man beg for his life and felt nothing, and that scared me more than anything I'd done to him. Adrian's voice dropped lower. So I told Lucien I was done. He said nobody leaves. I left anyway. Disappeared for 6 months until I was sure he'd decided I wasn't worth hunting down. But he found you anyway. He was always going to find me eventually. Men like Lucien don't forget. They just wait for the right moment to remind you that leaving was temporary. And I'm that moment. You're the first thing I've cared about since walking away. Yes, that makes you leverage. Elena stood up on shaking legs. Get out! Elena, get out of my apartment. Get out of my life. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't look at you right now without seeing everything you just told me. I'm not that person anymore. Yes, you are. You're just pretending not to be. And eventually something will happen that forces you to be that person again, and I'll be standing there watching you become a monster. Elena's eyes burned. Lucien was right. I should have walked away. If you walk away now, he wins. I don't care about your stupid power games with your former boss. I care about not dying because I was stupid enough to think a man who showed up at my sister's wedding actually gave a shit about me. Adrian flinched like she'd slapped him. I do give a shit about you. That's the entire problem. No. The problem is you're dangerous and you lied, and now I'm in danger because of choices you made before we ever met. Elena grabbed her phone off the coffee table. Leave, now, or I'm calling the police. And telling them what? That I used to work for criminals? They can't do anything with that information unless you have evidence. Then I'll call Lucien and tell him I want protection. Adrian's expression shifted into something terrifying. You call Lucien and you become his property. Is that what you want? I want to feel safe, and I don't feel safe with you. They stared at each other across the small living room. Two people who'd spent months building something that had just collapsed completely. Finally, Adrian moved toward the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have told you before it came to this. You deserved that honesty. You're right. I did. If Lucien contacts you again, don't meet with him. Don't engage. Call the police and report him for harassment. Why would I trust your advice? Because regardless of what you think about me right now, I know how Lucien operates and you don't. He's not trying to protect you. He's trying to use you. Don't let him. Adrian left without waiting for a response. Elena locked the door behind him and slid down against it until she was sitting on the floor, shaking. She'd spent 3 months building a connection with someone who turned out to be exactly what she'd always feared. Someone dangerous hiding behind kind words and gentle gestures. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I heard Adrian paid you a visit. Interesting timing. When you're ready to have an honest conversation about your safety, call me. The offer for protection still stands. LG. Elena stared at the message. Lucien had been watching her apartment, knew exactly when Adrian showed up, which meant she'd been under surveillance this entire time without knowing it. She was trapped between two dangerous men playing games she didn't understand, and she had no idea which one was more likely to destroy her. Her phone rang. Her mother's number. Elena declined the call. Then she opened her messages and typed out a text to Adrian. Don't contact me again. She hit send before she could change her mind. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty, too full of ghosts from conversations that had just revealed themselves as lies. Elena pulled herself off the floor and walked to her bedroom, lay down on top of the covers fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling while her mind raced through every detail of the past 24 hours. Yesterday, she'd been terrified but hopeful. Today, she was just terrified. Around midnight, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Morel, Lucien's voice came through smooth and professional. I'm sorry you had to have that conversation with Adrian. I know it must have been difficult. How are you watching me? I have resources. That's not important. What's important is that you're now fully aware of the situation. Adrian Vale is dangerous, and his presence in your life makes you dangerous by association. What do you want from me? Smart question. Lucien sounded pleased. I want Adrian to understand that retirement isn't real, that the life he built was always temporary, and I want him to watch it fall apart because he thought caring about someone made him untouchable. So I'm just a message. You're whatever you choose to be. Work with me and I'll make sure you stay safe. Keep seeing Adrian, and eventually his past will catch up to both of you in ways you won't survive. Elena's hands shook. What does working with you mean? Simple. You stay close to Adrian. You tell me his movements, his plans, where he goes and who he sees. You become my eyes on someone who owes me answers about why he thought walking away was acceptable. You want me to spy on him. I want you to survive. Spying is just the method. Lucien paused. If you refuse, then Adrian's enemies become your enemies. And there are people in this world who would hurt you just to prove a point to him. Is that really a risk worth taking for a man who lied to you from the beginning? Elena closed her eyes. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow night. After that, my protection offer expires, and you're on your own. Lucien's voice hardened. Choose wisely, Miss Morel. Very few people survive these situations by accident. The line went dead. Elena sat in the darkness of her bedroom holding her phone and trying to figure out which choice would kill her faster, trusting Adrian or trusting Lucien. Both options felt like dying slowly, and she'd never felt more alone in her entire life. Her phone buzzed one more time, a message from Adrian. I understand why you're scared. I would be too, but don't trust Lucien. Whatever he's offering, it's a trap. Please be careful. Elena read it 3 times. Then she turned off her phone completely and buried herself under the blankets. Tomorrow she'd have to make a choice. Tonight she just wanted to pretend none of this was real. But morning would come regardless. And with it, consequences she couldn't avoid no matter how hard she tried to disappear. Elena didn't turn her phone back on until noon the next day. 23 missed calls. 47 text messages. Most from numbers she didn't recognize. A few from Adrian. One from Vivian that just said Mom is losing her mind. Call her. Elena deleted everything without reading. She made coffee with shaking hands and sat at her kitchen table trying to figure out how to survive the next 24 hours. Lucien wanted an answer by tonight. Adrian wanted her to trust him despite everything he'd admitted. And somewhere between those two options was a version of Elena who just wanted to disappear entirely. Her doorbell rang at 1 p.m. Elena looked through the peephole expecting Adrian or worse. Instead, she saw a delivery driver holding a large envelope. She opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Elena Morel? The driver checked his tablet. Signature required. Elena signed automatically and took the envelope. Heavy paper, expensive. No return address. The driver left and Elena closed the door, staring at the package like it might explode. She opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, printed on glossy paper with timestamps in the corners. Her blood went cold. The first photo showed her sitting in her car outside the wedding venue. The second showed her walking into the hotel cafe with Adrian. The third showed them leaving together. More photos documented her apartment building from various angles, her car in the parking lot, her kitchen window visible from the street. Someone had been watching her for days, maybe weeks. A handwritten note fell from the envelope. Just so you understand how serious this is. You were never invisible, Miss Morel. You just didn't know anyone was looking. Make the right choice tonight. LG. Elena's face shook so badly she dropped the photographs. They scattered across her floor like evidence of surveillance she'd never suspected. She grabbed her phone and called the one person who might actually have answers. Adrian picked up on the first ring. Elena, he's been watching me for how long? Her voice came out too high, panic bleeding through every word. What happened? Photos. Lucien sent me photos of myself going to the wedding, meeting you, my apartment. How long has he been watching me? Adrian was quiet for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Since I showed up at the wedding. Maybe before, if he was tracking me and noticed you first. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hoped I was wrong. Hoped he'd lost interest. Hoped I could keep you separate from all this. Adrian's voice carried an edge she hadn't heard before, raw anger barely contained. Where are you right now? My apartment. Get out. Right now. Pack a bag and leave. I can't just... Elena. Adrian's voice went hard. Lucien doesn't send surveillance photos as a courtesy. He sends them as a threat. It means he's escalating. You need to leave that apartment immediately. Elena looked around her small living room, the space she'd lived in for 3 years, the only place that felt safe. Where am I supposed to go? Anywhere public, coffee shop, library. Somewhere with witnesses and cameras. Adrian paused. Or give me your address and I'll come get you. Absolutely not. Then text me where you end up. I need to know you're somewhere Lucien can't get to you easily. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she didn't need his protection or his concern, but the photographs scattered across her floor told a different story. Fine, I'll text you. She hung up before Adrian could say anything else. 20 minutes later, Elena sat in a crowded Starbucks 3 miles from her apartment with a duffel bag containing clothes, her laptop, and everything valuable she owned. Her hand still shook around her coffee cup. She texted Adrian the address. His response came immediately. Stay there, I'm coming. I said no. I don't care what you said. You're in danger and I'm not leaving you alone to deal with it. Elena wanted to throw her phone across the cafe. Instead, she set it face down on the table and tried to look normal while her entire world collapsed. A woman at the next table glanced over with concern. You okay, honey? Fine, just tired. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that. The woman nodded sympathetically and went back to her book. Elena pulled out her own phone and stared at Lucien's message from last night. The one offering protection in exchange for information. She could call him right now, tell him she'd cooperate, become his spy, and maybe survive whatever game he was playing with Adrian. But Adrian's words echoed in her head. Whatever he's offering is a trap. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered because at this point, what else could go wrong? Miss Morel. Lucien's voice came through smooth as glass. I trust you received my package. You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. She could hear the smile in his voice. Have you made your decision? I need more time. Time is a luxury you don't have. I need your answer tonight, or the protection offer expires. Protection from what? From you? From everyone. You think I'm your only problem? Lucien laughed softly. Adrian has enemies beyond me. People who'd hurt you just to hurt him. People who don't care about collateral damage. At least I'm offering you a way to survive this. By betraying someone who cares about me. By choosing self-preservation over misplaced loyalty. Adrian lied to you from the beginning. Why are you protecting him? Elena didn't have an answer for that. 6 p.m., Lucien continued. I'll text you a location. Show up alone and we'll finalize our arrangement. Don't show up and you're on your own. Understood? I understand. Good. I look forward to our partnership. The line went dead. Elena sat staring at her phone while the cafe continued its normal afternoon rhythm around her. People ordered lattes, worked on laptops, had conversations about mundane things like weekend plans and grocery lists. None of them were trapped between two dangerous men playing games with her life. The cafe door opened and Adrian walked in. He scanned the room until his eyes found her, then moved directly to her table without hesitation. Sat down across from her like they'd planned this meeting instead of her explicitly telling him not to come. You shouldn't be here, Elena said quietly. Neither should you, but here we are. Adrian's eyes tracked across her face, cataloging damage she couldn't hide. When did Lucien call? 5 minutes ago. What did he want? An answer, tonight at 6. Adrian's jaw clenched. You're not going. That's not your choice. Elena Don't. She leaned forward, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Don't tell me what to do. Don't pretend you have any authority over my choices. You lost that right when you lied about who you are. I never lied. Omission is the same thing. No, it's not. But I'm not arguing semantics with you right now. Adrian glanced around the cafe, clearly uncomfortable with the public setting. Lucien isn't offering protection. He's offering ownership. Once you agree to work for him, you don't get to change your mind. And staying close to you is better? You admitted you killed people, that your past is still hunting you. How is that safer? It's not. But at least with me, you know the threat. With Lucien, you're walking into something worse while thinking it's a solution. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the man who'd flown across the country to stand beside her at a wedding was telling the truth now, even if he hadn't before. But trust required faith she didn't have anymore. What do you want me to do? She finally asked, exhausted. Don't meet Lucien tonight. Let me handle this. Handle it how? Adrian's expression went cold. The same way I handled things before I tried to be someone better. You mean violence? I mean ending the threat permanently so you can go back to your life. My life is already over. The second you showed up at that wedding, everything changed. I can't go back. Elena's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. So tell me how exactly you plan to fix this without making it worse. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decisions already made. Lucien wants me to come back. To admit leaving was a mistake. That's what this whole thing is about. His ego. Adrian leaned back in his chair. I give him what he wants. Walk back into that life. Except this time, I make sure he can't ever threaten you again. You mean kill him? I mean end the problem. That's the same thing. Yes. The word hung between them like a weapon. Elena shook her head slowly. I'm not asking you to kill someone for me. You're not asking. I'm offering. No. Elena? No. Her voice came out sharper than intended. I won't be responsible for that. I won't be the reason you go back to being the person you spent 2 years trying to leave behind. Then what's your solution? Because sitting here pretending this will resolve itself isn't a plan. I don't know, maybe I meet with Lucien, hear what he actually wants. See if there's a way to end this without anyone dying. Adrian's expression shifted into something terrifying. Not anger exactly, but absolute certainty that she was wrong. You walk into that meeting and you don't walk back out the same person. Lucien will own you. He'll use you to get to me and then discard you when you're no longer useful. Is that really better than letting me protect you? Your protection involves murder. My protection involves keeping you alive. If that requires violence, then yes, that's what I'll do. They stared at each other while the cafe continued its oblivious afternoon routine. Elena felt like she was drowning. Every choice led somewhere terrible. Every option required trusting someone who'd already proven they'd lie when convenient. Her phone buzzed with a text. Lucien's message showed an address across town and a single line, 6 p.m. Don't be late. Elena showed Adrian the screen. His eyes went dead. That's a warehouse in the industrial district. No witnesses, no cameras, no way to walk away if things go wrong. Maybe that's the point. Maybe he wants privacy for whatever conversation we're having. Or maybe he's planning something worse than conversation. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because that's how these things work, Elena. Lucien doesn't do private meetings out of courtesy. He does them because he wants control over what happens next. Elena's hands shook. She set her phone down before she dropped it. I don't know what to do. Let me go instead. I'll meet Lucien. End this tonight. And if he kills you, then at least you're safe. That's not... Elena stopped, throat closing. That's not an acceptable solution. It's the only one that guarantees you survive. I don't want you to die for me. Then you do care. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to maintain the anger that had sustained her through last night's revelations. But sitting across from Adrian in this too-bright cafe, watching him offer to walk into danger just to keep her safe, she couldn't hold on to the fury. Of course I care. That's the entire problem. Adrian's expression softened slightly. Then trust me to handle this. I can't, because handling this means you becoming the person you hate, and I won't be responsible for that. You're not responsible. I'm making this choice. Because of me, which makes it my responsibility. They reached an impasse neither could cross. Finally, Adrian pulled out his phone and typed something quickly, showed her the screen. I'll be outside the warehouse at 5:45. If anything feels wrong, text me and I'll come in. But please don't go in alone. That's your compromise? Elena asked. That's me acknowledging you're going to do what you think is right regardless of what I say. So I'm making sure there's a backup plan. Elena read the message again. It wasn't much, but it was something. Okay. Okay, you'll text me? Okay, I'll think about it. Adrian nodded slowly, clearly unhappy but accepting the limitation. I need you to promise me something. What? If Lucien tries to force you into anything tonight, any agreement, any deal, anything that doesn't feel right, you walk out. Immediately. Don't negotiate. Don't explain. Just leave. And if he doesn't let me leave? Then you scream my name and I'll make sure you get out. The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it felt almost comforting, having someone willing to burn the world down to keep her safe, even if that someone was dangerous himself. They sat in silence for another few minutes while Elena tried to prepare herself for whatever was coming. Her entire body felt wound too tight, like piano wires stretched to breaking. "I should go," she finally said. "Get ready. Figure out what I'm going to say." "Where are you staying tonight?" "Hotel somewhere. I don't know yet. Text me the address. I'll check that it's safe." "Adrian, please, let me do this one thing." Elena nodded because she was too tired to argue anymore. They left the cafe together and walked to her car. Adrian stayed close, but not touching, like he understood she needed space but couldn't quite bring himself to give her too much distance. When they reached her Honda, he finally spoke again. "Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know I meant everything I said. You weren't a project. You weren't convenient. You were the first person in 2 years who made me think I could actually be someone better." Elena's throat felt tight. "But you can't be that person if it means going back to violence." "Maybe not, but I can be the person who keeps you alive. And right now, that's all that matters." He turned and walked away before she could respond. Elena sat in her car for 10 minutes trying to steady her breathing. Her hands still shook on the steering wheel. Her heart hammered against her ribs. At 5:30, she drove toward the industrial district, following GPS directions to an address that promised nothing good. The warehouse loomed against the gray sky like something from a nightmare. 3 stories of rusted metal and broken windows. No cars visible nearby. No signs of life anywhere in the surrounding blocks. Elena parked across the street and checked her phone. 5:43 p.m. A text from Adrian. "I'm here. 3 buildings west behind the chain-link fence. Text me if you need me." Elena stared at the warehouse entrance. A single metal door slightly ajar. Darkness visible beyond it. Every instinct screamed at her to drive away, to choose survival over answers. But she'd spent 28 years letting fear make her choices. And where had that gotten her? She grabbed her phone and got out of the car. The evening air felt cold against her skin. Traffic sounds drifted from the highway a mile away, but here everything sat silent and waiting. Elena crossed the street and approached the door, pushed it open slowly. "Hello?" Her voice echoed through empty space. "Miss Morel." Lucien's voice came from somewhere deeper inside. "Come in. Close the door behind you." Elena stepped through the threshold and let the door swing shut. The sound of metal on metal felt final, irreversible. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the dim light. The warehouse stretched vast and empty except for support pillars and construction debris scattered across concrete floors. Lucien stood near the center of the space, hands in his pockets, looking perfectly comfortable in this industrial graveyard. "You came alone," he said. "Smart." "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has choices. Some are just less appealing than others." Lucici gestured vaguely around them. "Do you know why I picked this location? Because it's terrifying. Because it's private. What we discuss tonight stays between us." He took a step closer. "Have you made your decision?" Elena's heart raced. "I want to understand what you're actually asking me to do." "Simple. You continue your relationship with Adrian. You tell me when he makes plans, where he goes, who he contacts. You become my eyes on someone who thinks he can ignore consequences. And if I refuse, then Adrian's enemies become yours, and I stop caring whether you survive the collateral damage." "You keep saying Adrian has other enemies. Who?" "People he hurt during his 6 years working for me. People who lost family members or money or status because of his efficiency. People who'd very much like to remind him that walking away doesn't erase what he did." Lucien's expression didn't change. "Some of those people know about you now, and they're considerably less patient than I am." Elena felt cold spread through her chest. "You told them about me. I may have mentioned Adrian's newfound soft spot to a few interested parties, just to expedite things. You're using me as bait. I'm using you as leverage. There's a difference." Lucien pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. "These are messages from 3 separate individuals asking for your address. I've been politely declining because you and I hadn't finalized our arrangement yet. But if you walk away tonight, I stop declining." Elena stared at the messages. Different names she didn't recognize, all asking the same thing. "Where can we find the girl?" Her legs felt weak. "You're a monster. I'm pragmatic. Adrian made choices that had consequences. You're just one of them." Lucien pocketed his phone. "So I'll ask again. Will you work with me, or do I tell these gentlemen where to find you?" Elena's mind raced. Every option led somewhere terrible. agree and betray Adrian, refuse and face enemies she didn't understand. I need more time. No, you don't. You need courage to accept reality. Lucian's voice hardened. Adrian destroyed lives, ruined people, and then walked away like none of it mattered. Someone needs to remind him that actions have consequences. That's all this is. By threatening me, by using the only thing he cares about to bring him back to reality. Elena's hands curled into fists. The anger she'd been swallowing for 24 hours finally found its target. You're doing this because he left. Because he decided being a criminal wasn't worth it anymore. That's what this is really about. This is about ego, pride, your inability to accept that someone saw what you are and decided it wasn't worth staying for. Elena took a step closer despite every survival instinct screaming at her to retreat. Adrian walked away because you're empty, and you can't stand that someone finally noticed. Lucian's expression went flat. Careful, Miss Morel. Or what? You'll hurt me? You're already threatening me. At least now I'm being honest about what you actually are. You have no idea what I am. I know you're pathetic. I know you're so desperate for validation that you're using me to force someone back into a life they escaped. I know. Lucian moved faster than Elena expected. His hand shot out and grabbed her left wrist, gripped tight enough to bruise. You should have taken the deal. Elena tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. Let go. You walked in here thinking you were brave, thinking you could negotiate. But you're just another person who doesn't understand how this world actually works. Fear flooded Elena's system. She opened her mouth to scream Adrian's name. The warehouse door exploded inward. Adrian appeared in the entrance, and everything about him was different. No carefully controlled civility, no practiced calm, just raw violence barely contained in human form. Let her go. Lucien didn't release Elena's wrist. I was wondering when you'd stop pretending you weren't here. I said let her go. Or what? You'll remind me why I never should have let you leave. Lucien's grip tightened until Elena gasped in pain. Come try. Adrian crossed the warehouse floor like a predator, each step deliberate, measured, terrifying. You wanted me to come back. Here I am. His voice carried no emotion. But Elena walks out first. That's not how this works. Then I'll make you let her go. Lucien finally released Elena's wrist and shoved her backward. She stumbled but caught herself against a support pillar. Show me, Lucien said softly. Show her what you really are. Let her see the monster underneath all that pretend redemption. Adrian's eyes went dead, and Elena realized with crystalline clarity that she was about to watch him become exactly what Lucien wanted, exactly what she'd begged him not to become. Adrian, she started. Get out. His voice barely registered as human. Walk out that door and don't look back. I'm not leaving you here. Yes, you are. Because what happens next isn't something you need to see. Lucien laughed. Listen to him, Miss Morel. He's trying to protect you from the truth about who he is. How sweet. Adrian moved. 1 second he stood 10 feet from Lucien. The next he'd closed the distance and his fist connected with Lucien's jaw hard enough to snap his head sideways. Lucien recovered instantly and swung back. His punch caught Adrian in the ribs with force that made Elena wince. They crashed together in close combat. No technique, no grace, just brutal efficiency and years of violence compressed into seconds. Elena screamed, "Stop!" Neither man heard her. Adrian slammed Lucien against a support pillar. Concrete cracked. Lucien drove his knee into Adrian's stomach and followed with an elbow to his temple. Blood appeared. Elena couldn't tell whose. They separated briefly, both breathing hard, circling each other like animals. This is what she's choosing, Lucien said, wiping blood from his split lip. This is what you're protecting, Elena. A man who only knows how to solve problems through violence. Shut up. Adrian's voice came out raw. Make me. They collided again. Fists, elbows, knees, the sound of impact echoed through the empty warehouse like thunder. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Could only watch as Adrian became exactly what she'd feared he was underneath all the careful control. Lucien was good, but Adrian was better, or maybe just more desperate. He got Lucien down on the concrete, arm wrapped around his throat in a hold that looked final. Elena, Adrian said without looking at her. Walk out. Now. Adrian, I said walk out. His voice carried such absolute command that Elena's legs moved before her mind caught up. She stumbled toward the door. Behind her, Lucian choked out words. You think this changes anything? It ends you threatening her. Kill me, and you prove I was right about what you are. Elena reached the door and grabbed the handle. She should leave. Should let this end however it was going to end without watching. But her feet wouldn't move. She turned back. Adrian still had Lucian in that brutal hold. His face showed no emotion, no conflict, just cold calculation about how much pressure was required to finish this. Adrian, Elena said quietly. Please. For the first time since entering the warehouse, Adrian's eyes found hers, and she saw the exact moment he recognized what choosing violence would cost him. Not just his redemption, but her. His grip loosened slightly. Lucien took the opportunity and twisted free, gasping. He scrambled backward across the concrete, coughing. See? Lucien managed between breaths. She makes you weak. No. Adrian stood slowly, still watching Elena. She makes me remember why I left. Then you're both going to die. Lucien pulled something from his jacket. Metal glinted in the dim light. A gun. Elena's scream caught in her throat. The weapon rose toward Adrian, and time seemed to fracture into pieces, moving too slow and too fast simultaneously. Adrian dove sideways as the shot rang out. The gunshot tore through the warehouse like thunder splitting the sky. Adrian hit the concrete and rolled sideways as the bullet sparked off metal somewhere behind him. Lucien adjusted his aim, finger already tightening for a second shot. Elena moved without thinking. She grabbed a piece of broken pipe from the debris near the door and swung it with everything she had. The metal connected with Lucien's wrist just as he fired again. The shot went wild, punching through a window 20 feet away. The gun clattered across the floor. Lucien turned on her with rage, contorting his face into something inhuman. His uninjured hand shot out and caught her throat, lifting her slightly off the ground. Stupid girl, he hissed. You just signed your own... Adrian slammed into Lucien from the side with the force of a freight train. They crashed together across the concrete. Elena fell hard, gasping for air, her throat screaming where Lucien's fingers had crushed against her windpipe. The two men grappled with savage intensity. Lucien was fast, but Adrian fought like something beyond human. Like every ounce of violence he'd spent 2 years suppressing had finally broken free. Elena crawled toward the gun. Her hand closed around cold metal just as Lucien threw Adrian off and lunged toward her. She raised the weapon with shaking hands and pointed it at Lucien's chest. Stop. Her voice came out hoarse and broken, but the message was clear. Lucien froze. You won't shoot me. You don't know that. Yes, I do. You're not like us. You're soft, scared. You've never hurt anyone in your life, and you won't start now. Elena's finger trembled against the trigger. He was right. She'd never fired a gun. Never intentionally caused pain to another human being. Everything in her wiring said to put the weapon down and find another solution. But Lucien had threatened her, choked her, orchestrated everything that had destroyed her life over the past 48 hours. And she was so tired of being prey. Try me, she whispered. Something shifted in Lucien's expression, uncertainty replacing confidence. Adrian pulled himself upright, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. He moved carefully toward Elena without taking his eyes off Lucien. Give me the gun, Adrian said quietly. No. Elena, I said no. She kept the weapon trained on Lucien even as her arms shook from the effort. You were right. If you kill him, you become exactly what he says you are. So I'll do it. I'll carry that instead of you. You don't want to live with that choice. And you do? Adrian reached her side and gently placed his hand over hers on the gun. Not taking it, not forcing her, just steadying her grip. We can call the police, he said softly. Report the assault, the threats, the surveillance. It's not murder if we have evidence. He'll get out eventually. He'll come after us again. Maybe, but at least we won't become him. Elena's eyes burned. Her entire body shook. The weight of the gun felt impossible, and she wanted desperately to put it down. But Lucien was still watching them both with calculation in his eyes, clearly measuring whether he could reach them before she pulled the trigger. The police won't do anything, Lucien said. I have lawyers, resources. I'll be out before you finish giving your statement. Then we make sure the evidence is overwhelming, Adrian replied, starting with you admitting on recording exactly what you've done. I'm not confessing to anything. Adrian pulled out his phone with his free hand. You already did. I've been recording since I walked through that door. Lucien's face went pale. Adrian played back audio. Lucien's voice came through crystal clear. You walked in here thinking you were brave. You should have taken the deal. You're just another person who doesn't understand how this world actually works. More playback. Lucien threatening to give Elena's address to Adrian's enemies. Lucien admitting he'd been surveilling her. Every word captured and time-stamped. That's illegal recording, Lucien said, but his voice carried less certainty now. Maybe. But combined with Elena's testimony about the assault, the photographs you sent, and the attempted murder we all just witnessed, Adrian's expression was cold. Your lawyers will have a hard time making this disappear. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Lucien's eyes widened. You called the police? Before I ever walked in here. Told them I heard gunshots at this address. They were probably already on their way when you decided to escalate with that gun. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the broken windows. Lucien looked between them both with something that might have been respect or might have been hatred. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Adrian's voice carried absolute finality. You're going to prison, and even if you get out eventually, you'll know that coming after us again means I stop being civilized. I stop trying to be better. I become exactly what you wanted, except directed entirely at you. No witnesses, no evidence. Just you disappearing so completely that nobody ever finds enough pieces to identify. The warehouse door burst open and 3 police officers rushed in, weapons drawn. On the ground! Hands where I can see them! Adrian carefully took the gun from Elena and set it on the floor, then raised both hands. Elena did the same. Lucien stood frozen until an officer tackled him to the concrete and cuffed him roughly. Everything after that blurred into procedure and questions and statements given in separate rooms at the police station. Elena sat in a cold interrogation room with a female detective who looked exhausted and underpaid, answered every question mechanically while her throat throbbed where Lucien had grabbed her. They photographed the bruises, took her statement about the surveillance photos, the threats, the assault, asked if she wanted to press charges. Elena said yes without hesitation. Hours passed. Eventually, a different officer told her she was free to go, that they'd arrested Lucien on multiple charges, including assault, attempted murder, and stalking, that she'd need to come back for follow-up interviews, but for tonight, she was done. Elena walked out of the station into early morning darkness. 3 a.m., according to her phone. The city looked different at this hour, quieter, emptier, like the world had reset while she was trapped inside giving statements. Adrian waited near her car. He'd been cleaned up by paramedics, the cut above his eye closed with butterfly stitches, various other injuries documented and treated. But his eyes still carried that dead quality she'd seen in the warehouse, like he'd crossed back into the person he used to be and wasn't sure how to find his way out again. They stood apart from each other in the parking lot, 2 people who'd survived something terrible but didn't know how to acknowledge it yet. You okay? Adrian asked finally. No, you? No. Silence stretched between them while streetlights hummed overhead. Thank you, Helena said, for coming when I screamed, for not killing him even though you could have. You're the one who stopped me. I was going to finish it. Adrian's hands curled into fists. If you hadn't been there, I would have. But I was there, and you chose differently, this time. But there'll be other times, other threats. This life I tried to leave doesn't just disappear because I want it to. Adrian met her eyes finally. You were right to be angry. You were right to want me gone. Being with me will always mean dealing with my past. I know. So where does that leave us? Elena didn't have an answer. She was exhausted down to her bones. Her throat hurt. Her wrist throbbed where Lucien had grabbed her. Every part of her body ached from adrenaline crash. But standing here looking at Adrian, this man who'd flown across the country twice, who'd fought to protect her, who'd let her choose whether to pull a trigger so he wouldn't have to become a monster again, she realized something fundamental. She didn't want to walk away. I need time, she said finally, to process everything, to figure out if I can actually live with knowing what you've done and who you used to be. That's fair? But I'm not saying goodbye. Not yet. Not unless you want me to. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Not quite hope, but maybe the beginning of it. I don't want you to, he said quietly, but I'll understand if eventually you decide you need to. Okay. They stood in the parking lot for another minute, neither moving, both too wrecked to make bigger decisions. Finally, Elena unlocked her car. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, the Riverside Inn off Highway 9, room 237. You want me to follow? Make sure you get there safely? Yes. But don't come in. Just make sure nobody followed me from the station. Adrian nodded. I can do that. Elena drove to the hotel with Adrian's headlights visible in her rearview mirror the entire way. Something about having him there, keeping watch, making sure she was safe, settled the panic that had been building in her chest since the warehouse. She checked into her room and texted him that she'd made it. His response came immediately. I'm in the parking lot if you need me. Otherwise, I'll leave in an hour once I'm sure everything's quiet. Elena stood in the generic hotel room staring at her phone. Part of her wanted to text him to come upstairs, to not be alone tonight after everything that happened. But another part knew they both needed space to process before making any more decisions they couldn't take back. She showered carefully, avoiding the bruises on her throat and wrist, changed into clean clothes, lay down on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling while her mind replayed the warehouse over and over. The sound of the gunshot, the feeling of Lucienne's hand crushing her throat, the weight of the gun in her hands, and how close she'd come to pulling that trigger. She'd meant it. In that moment, she would have shot him. That realization terrified her more than anything else. Sleep eventually came in broken pieces full of violence and fear, and Adrian's dead eyes when he'd been about to kill Lucien. Morning arrived too bright and too loud. Elena's phone showed 3 missed calls from Vivian and a text from her mother. The police called asking questions about you and someone named Adrian Vale. What is going on? Call me immediately. Elena deleted the message without responding. She wasn't ready to explain last night to anyone. Wasn't ready to hear her mother's disappointment or Vivian's concern disguised as judgment. A knock on the door made her jump. She looked through the peephole expecting Adrian. Instead, she found Vivian standing in the hallway holding 2 coffee cups and looking exhausted. Elena opened the door slowly. How did you know where I was? Mom called every hotel in the area until she found you. I volunteered to drive over before she did because I figured you'd prefer me. Vivian held out one of the coffee cups. Can I come in? Elena took the coffee and stepped aside. Vivian entered the small room and took in Elena's appearance with eyes that missed nothing. The bruises on her throat, the exhaustion radiating from every gesture, the way Elena held herself like someone who'd survived something terrible and didn't know how to talk about it yet. What happened? Vivian asked quietly. Long story. I have time. Elena sat down on the edge of the bed and wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. Vivian sat in the chair by the window and waited with unusual patience. Finally, Elena told her. Not everything, not the details of Adrian's past or exactly what had happened in the warehouse, but enough. The surveillance, the threats, the confrontation that ended with Lucien arrested and Elena giving statements to police until 3 in the morning. Vivian listened without interrupting. When Elena finished, her sister was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry, Vivian said finally. For what? For not seeing how lonely you were. For not noticing that something in your life was so broken that you'd risk everything for someone you barely knew. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. You were right about everything you said the other day. I have been treating you like a project, like someone who needed my pity instead of my respect. And I'm sorry. Elena's throat tightened. I shouldn't have said it like that. I was angry and I took it out on you. No, you should have said it years ago, and I should have listened. Vivian wiped her eyes roughly. I've spent my whole life being the successful one, the pretty one, the one everyone celebrated, and somewhere along the way I convinced myself that meant you needed protecting, that your life was sadder than mine and my job was to make you feel included. But that was never what you needed. What did I need? To be seen as equal, as whole, as someone capable of making your own choices even when they're dangerous. Vivian managed a weak smile. Even when they involve scary men who show up at weddings unannounced. Adrian isn't... Elena stopped. Actually, he is kind of scary, but not to me. Usually. Do you love him? The question hung in the air between them. Elena had been avoiding thinking about that word. Love required trust, and trust required believing someone wouldn't destroy you, and after everything that happened, she didn't know if she could believe that about anyone. I don't know, she finally said. I care about him more than I should probably, but love feels like something that requires more time than we've had. Love doesn't follow timelines. Vivian set down her coffee cup. Mom and Dad fell in love in 3 weeks, married 6 months later. Sometimes you just know. Did you know? With Marcus? Vivian hesitated. I knew Marcus was safe, stable, that marrying him meant security and respect and everything I was supposed to want. But did I feel the way you looked at Adrian during the wedding? No, I've never felt that. How did I look at him? Like he was the only person in the room, like everyone else had disappeared and only he existed. Vivian's expression turned sad. I spent my whole wedding watching you watch him, and I realized I'd never looked at Marcus that way. I'd never felt desperate enough for someone's attention that I'd cross a crowded room just to stand beside them. You're married now. It's too late to have regrets. I'm not having regrets. I'm just acknowledging that maybe you found something I haven't, something real instead of just appropriate. Vivian stood up. I should go before Mom decides to drive over here herself. But Elena? Yeah? Whatever you decide about Adrian, make sure it's what you actually want, not what's safe, not what makes other people comfortable, what you want. Vivian left before Elena could respond. Elena sat alone in the hotel room drinking lukewarm coffee and thinking about wanting versus needing versus choosing. Her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. How are you feeling today? Sore, tired, still processing? That's fair. You need anything? Elena stared at the question. What did she need? Safety felt impossible. Clarity felt unreachable. Understanding felt too complicated. But maybe she needed something simpler. Can you come over, just to sit with me? Nothing heavy, just company. I'm outside in the parking lot. Give me 2 minutes. Elena's heart skipped. He'd been out there all night, watching, making sure she stayed safe even though she'd told him to leave after an hour. She opened the door before he knocked. Adrian looked worse in daylight. The cut above his eyes stood out starkly against pale skin. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd changed clothes, but exhaustion radiated from every part of him. You stayed all night, Elena said. I wasn't going to leave you alone, not after yesterday. I told you to go home. I know, but I'm very bad at following instructions when I think they're wrong. Adrian stayed in the doorway. Can I come in, or are we having this conversation in the hall? Elena stepped back. Adrian entered and stood awkwardly near the window, like he wasn't sure where he was allowed to be. Elena gestured toward the chair Vivian had vacated. Sit. You look like you're about to fall over. I haven't slept. Neither have I. Sit anyway. Adrian sat. Elena returned to the edge of the bed. They looked at each other across 3 feet of space that might as well have been miles. Tell me something true, Elena said finally. Such as? Are you going to be able to walk away from that life? Really walk away? Or is last night just the beginning of more violence and danger? Adrian was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of honesty that cost him something to give. I don't know. I want to believe I can be someone different, that I can build a normal life that doesn't involve looking over my shoulder constantly. But Lucienne isn't the only person from my past. There are others. And eventually some of them might decide I need reminding that leaving has consequences. So this could happen again. Yes. Maybe not exactly like this, but something similar. Someone from before showing up and trying to use whatever I care about as leverage. That's terrifying. I know. That's why I understand if you want to walk away now, before you're in deeper. Adrian's eyes stayed locked on hers. But I need you to know that if you stay, I will do everything in my power to keep you safe, even if it means becoming someone I hate again. That's not reassuring. It's honest. That's all I can give you. Elena pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. The hotel room felt too small suddenly, too confined. She wanted to be outside somewhere with space to breathe. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to care about someone whose past keeps showing up to destroy the present. You don't have to figure it out today. We can take this as slow as you need. Chashulo, can we though? because it feels like everything's been moving at light speed since you showed up at that wedding, and I don't know how to slow down when there's always some new crisis. Adrian nodded slowly. You're right. We haven't had time to just exist together without drama, without danger, without me constantly pulling you into situations you shouldn't have to navigate. So what do? We start over, properly this time. Adrian stood up carefully. I'll go home, give you space. And when you're ready, if you're ready, we try again. Actual dates, normal conversations, getting to know each other without criminal bosses and warehouse confrontations. What if I'm never ready? Then I accept that and move on. But I hope you will be. Because you're the best thing that's happened to me in years, and I don't want to lose you because I handled this wrong from the beginning. Elena felt something crack in her chest. This man who'd killed people and broken bones and done terrible things was standing in a hotel room telling her honestly that he'd walk away if that's what she needed. That felt like power, like choice, like finally being seen as something other than fragile. Don't leave yet, she heard herself say. Elena, I'm not saying stay forever. I'm saying sit back down for 10 more minutes. Let me look at you without fear or adrenaline or immediate danger. Let me see if there's something worth fighting for underneath all the violence. Adrian sat back down. Elena studied him in the harsh morning light, the scars on his knuckles, the way his shoulders carried tension like armor, the exhaustion in his eyes that suggested years of sleeping with one eye open. But beneath all that, she saw glimpses of the man who'd sent her messages at 3 in the morning about philosophy and music, who'd noticed small details about her life that nobody else remembered, who'd flown across the country because she'd typed, "I wish you were here," into her phone. That man was worth fighting for. Maybe. Tell me what normal looks like for you, Elena said. If we started over, if we did this right, what would that actually be? Adrian considered the question carefully. Coffee dates. Real ones where we talk about things that matter without life or death stakes. Maybe dinner somewhere nice where you can show me what actual happiness looks like instead of survival mode. Taking walks without checking over our shoulders. Building something slow enough that it has foundation instead of just intensity. That sounds good. It does to me too. They sat in silence while morning light shifted across the hotel room. Outside, traffic sounds drifted in through the window. Normal life continuing while they tried to figure out if they could build something normal themselves. Finally, Elena made a decision. 1 month, she said. What? Give me 1 month. No contact, no messages, no showing up. Let me process everything without you being present. Let me figure out if what I feel is real or just adrenaline and trauma bonding. Elena met his eyes. If after 30 days I still want this, I'll call you, and we'll start fresh. Actually fresh this time. Adrian looked like she'd punched him, but he nodded slowly. Okay, 1 month. You agree? Just like that? What's the alternative? Push you when you need space and ruin any chance we might have? No. If you need a month, take it. I'll be here when you're ready, or I'll accept it if you decide you're not. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Having space. Having choice. Having someone respect her boundaries instead of trying to negotiate them away. That felt like hope. Adrian stood and moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, I meant what I said yesterday. You weren't a project. You weren't convenient. You were the first real thing I'd found in years. He turned back to look at her one more time. And regardless of what you decide in 30 days, thank you for giving me a chance to remember what caring about someone actually feels like. He left before she could respond. Elena sat alone in the hotel room for another hour. Eventually, she checked out and drove back to her apartment. The surveillance photos still littered her floor. She gathered them carefully and shredded every single one. The next few weeks passed in a blur of normal life reclaiming space. Police interviews where she gave more statements about Lucien and his threats. Therapy sessions where she unpacked trauma she didn't realize she'd been carrying for years. Conversations with Vivian that felt more honest than anything they'd shared in decades. Her mother eventually stopped calling every day. Marcus sent flowers with an apology card for not doing more to make Elena feel welcome at the wedding. Small gestures that didn't fix everything but acknowledged the problems existed. Elena went back to work, reconnected with a few friends she'd been avoiding, started rebuilding a life that looked sustainable instead of just survivable. And every night she lay awake thinking about Adrian, about the way he'd looked at her in the warehouse before almost killing Lucien, about the way he'd respected her request for space without argument, about whether 30 days would be enough time to know if what she felt was real. On day 28, Vivian called. "I need to tell you something," her sister said without preamble. "Okay?" "I've been thinking about what you said, about me never asking how you're actually doing, about treating you like a project instead of an equal." Vivian paused. "You were right, and I'm sorry. So I'm asking now, how are you actually doing?" Elena considered the question seriously instead of defaulting to fine. "I'm scared," she finally admitted. "I'm scared I'm going to call Adrian in 2 days and ruin my life. Or I'm scared I won't call him and spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I'm scared either choice leads somewhere I can't come back from." "Then stop thinking about forever. Just think about tomorrow. Do you want to hear his voice tomorrow? Yes or no?" "Yes." "Then call him tomorrow, see how that feels, then decide about the next day." "That's not how this works." "Says who? Who decided you have to figure out your entire future before taking one step?" Vivian's voice softened. "You spent 28 years being careful, planning every move, avoiding anything that might hurt. And where did that get you? Lonely in your apartment, wishing someone cared enough to actually see you. Maybe it's time to try something different." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "When did you get wise?" "When my sister was brave enough to tell me the truth and I actually listened for once." They talked for another hour about everything and nothing. When they hung up, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Connection. Real connection with her sister. Maybe things could change after all. Day 30 arrived too fast and too slow. Elena woke up at 6 a.m. knowing she had to make a choice. Call Adrian or let the month expire without contact and accept that as her answer. She made coffee, showered, got dressed, paced her apartment for 2 hours while her phone sat on the kitchen table. At 9 a.m., before she could talk herself out of it, she picked up the phone and called. Adrian answered on the first ring. "Elena?" Just her name. But the way he said it carried weight. "Hi." "Hi yourself. How are you?" Honestly, terrified. Of me? Of this. Of choosing something risky instead of safe. Of letting myself care about someone whose life comes with complications I don't understand. Adrian was quiet for a moment. "You know what's interesting?" "What?" "You called anyway, despite being terrified. That tells me something." "What does it tell you?" "That you're braver than you think, and that maybe you've decided I'm worth the risk." Adrian's voice softened. "Am I right?" Elena stared out her kitchen window at morning light hitting the buildings across the street, thought about the past 30 days of processing and therapy and slowly rebuilding herself, thought about the way Adrian had looked at her in that warehouse, the way he'd chosen not to become a monster even when it would have been easier, the way he'd given her space without argument when she asked for it. "Coffee," she finally said. "This afternoon. Somewhere public and normal where we can talk like regular people instead of survivors." "I can do that." 2 p.m.? That cafe near the park where we had our first real conversation? Perfect. "Elena?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for calling, for giving this another chance." Adrian paused. "I won't let you regret it." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can try." They hung up, and Elena stood in her kitchen feeling like she'd just jumped off a cliff. Except instead of falling, she was floating, suspended in possibility instead of drowning in fear. She spent the afternoon getting ready like it mattered, picked out clothes that made her feel confident instead of invisible, did her hair, put on makeup for the first time in weeks. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different physically, but because something in her eyes had changed. The resignation was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. At 1:45, she drove to the cafe. Adrian was already there, sitting at the same corner table they'd occupied 31 days ago. He stood when she entered, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then Elena crossed the cafe and sat down across from him. "Hi," she said. "Hi. This is weird. Very weird, but good weird? I don't know yet. Ask me in an hour." Adrian smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced one from the wedding. "Fair enough." They ordered coffee, talked about small things, work, weather, Books they'd read during the past month, surface conversation that slowly deepened into something more substantial. Elena told him about therapy, about the conversations with Vivian, about slowly learning to ask for what she needed instead of just accepting what was offered. Adrian told her about finding a legitimate job doing security consulting, about the nightmares that still woke him up some nights, about learning to live with his past instead of trying to erase it. Hours passed. Coffee turned into early dinner. Dinner stretched into evening. They walked through the park near the cafe as the sun set, maintaining careful distance between them, but slowly closing the gap. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said finally. "Anything." "Why me? Out of everyone you could have connected with online, everyone you could have pursued, why did you fly across the country for me?" Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Because you were honest. Not performatively honest, where you say the right vulnerable things to get attention. Just genuinely honest about being lonely and scared and not knowing how to navigate the world. Because you didn't pretend to be okay when you weren't. And because talking to you felt like the first real thing I'd experienced in years." "That's it? I was honest?" "That's not a small thing, Elena. Most people spend their entire lives performing, playing roles they think others want to see. You just existed, imperfectly, authentically, without apology. That's rare. That's worth crossing the country for." Elena felt tears burn behind her eyes. "I don't know if I'm ready for this. For us. For everything that comes with choosing you. I know, but I want to try. Slowly, carefully, with the understanding that I might change my mind and you'll respect that." "I can live with those terms." They stood in the park while evening faded into night. Finally, Adrian extended his left hand, matching hers. Elena took it. His grip was warm, steady, nothing tentative about it. "One day at a time?" she asked. "One day at a time," he agreed. They walked back toward the cafe, holding hands like normal people instead of survivors. Like two people building something fragile and new instead of carrying trauma from warehouse confrontations and criminal pasts. Elena didn't know if this would work, didn't know if Adrian's past would stay buried or come back to haunt them again, didn't know if she could build a life with someone whose history included violence she couldn't fully comprehend. But she knew she wanted to try, and that felt like enough for now. 6 months later, Elena stood in her apartment looking at the small velvet box sitting on her kitchen table. Inside was a ring. Simple silver band with 3 small stones, not diamonds, but something else, something meaningful. Adrian had left it there this morning with a note. No pressure, no timeline, just an option for if, when you're ready. Take all the time you need. Elena stared at the box for a long time. They'd spent 6 months building something real, actual dates, normal conversations, slow integration into each other's lives, meeting each other's friends. Elena finally introducing Adrian properly to Vivian and her parents. Her mother had been skeptical at first. Her father had asked pointed questions about Adrian's work. But eventually, they'd seen what Elena saw, someone who genuinely cared about their daughter instead of pitying her. Vivian liked him, said he reminded her of someone who'd fought hard to become better and actually meant it. There had been no more confrontations, no more threats. Lucien was serving 8 years for assault, attempted murder, and racketeering charges that the police uncovered during their investigation. His organization had fallen apart without leadership. Adrian's past stayed in the past. Elena picked up the box and opened it slowly. The ring caught the light, throwing small prisms across her walls. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, hiding at her sister's wedding, apologizing for existing, convinced she'd never matter to anyone. That woman felt like a stranger now. Elena Morel had learned something over the past 6 months. Being shy had never made her weak. It just meant her heart had always been careful about who deserved to reach it. And Adrian Vale, despite his past, despite the violence he'd carried, despite everything that should have made him wrong for her, had somehow earned that trust. She slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Elena pulled out her phone and took a photo, then sent it to Adrian with a simple message. "Yes, but we're doing this our way. Small wedding, no vineyard, just people who actually matter." His response came within seconds. "I'll marry you anywhere, your terms, always." Elena smiled and set down her phone. Outside her window, the city continued its evening rhythm. Cars passed. People walked dogs. Normal life unfolding like it always had. But inside her apartment, everything had changed. Elena Morel was no longer invisible. She was seen, chosen, loved by someone who'd crossed every shadow in his world just to hold her heart gently. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.